Hi, I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. In this video, I'm going to begin sort of the last phase of this multi-part, multi-day, multi-hour in-depth analysis into semiology. And we begin with Lacan. The rest of the video is going to be Lacan's interpretation of this. And the reason why I presented Lacan last is because you're not going to be able to understand Lacan without a very, very rigorous understanding of everything else that we had to discuss. You have to understand what the primary source of meaning is. You have to understand what the secondary source of meaning is. You have to understand what value is. You have to understand the role of the signifier. You have to understand, especially have to understand the role of the signifier. You have to understand the relationship between signs. All of this needs to be understood to understanding Lacan, because Lacan notoriously, especially in this text, the text is the instance of the letter in the unconscious. Since its reason since Freud is the text. His analysis in this is notoriously opaque, right? And it really isn't, to be honest with you. It really isn't opaque per se. It's actually very, very clear. However, you're not going to be able to understand what Lacan says unless you have a very, very solid background in semiotics, because he takes everything for granted. The way that it's written is assuming that you already understand a very, very deep level of sort of semiotics and semiological relationships. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also make the assumption that Lacan made. I won't, if you're watching this video as the first installment of the series, I would recommend that you don't continue watching it. Go back and watch it from the first video until whatever video number this is, right? Because you are going to need to understand a very in-depth understanding of the relationship between parts within semiotics in order to understand Lacan. If you already understand Lacan and you already understand semiotics, well, then you'll be fine. The point being, if you're a general reader, if you're a general viewer rather, and you're just doing this for sort of your own edification, then go back, watch it from the beginning, and you'll understand where we are up to this point, because I've worked our way methodically in sort of complexity so that now we all should be on the same page, provided you've started from the beginning and followed me to this point. Okay, so this is section 3 in the analysis, and this is intro to semiotics, and this is section 3. And this is Lacan's, the instance of the letter in the unconscious, right? And I'll put that in. The instance of the letter in the instance of the letter in the unconscious. There's another sort of corollary text at the back of the book. I think it's called the signification of the phallus or something like that, which is important to the discussion, but it decided not to include the signification of the phallus for many reasons. One, it's too contested, and even I don't know where to sort of, I just don't know where to put the analysis. I think it's an important text. There's a lot of feminist critique on the concept of the phallus. There's a lot of defense of the phallus because it really isn't understood in terms of the phallus. But I stay away from that because, one, I'm not a psychoanalyst, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not interested in that sense. So that's the reason. But there is a lot of sort of semiological discourse in that text. So if you want to, on your own account, sort of get the knowledge from the text, then read, in addition to this text, the instance of the letter in the unconscious. Also read the signification of the phallus. I think it's what it's called. I don't remember. And I could look in the, well, actually, I can look in the book. It's right here. I think it's called signification of the phallus. Let me see if I can find the damn thing. Yeah, the signification of the phallus. So read that in addition to this. I deliberately omitted purse for a reason. I'm deliberately omitting the signification of the phallus, because there's more than enough in the instance of the letter of the unconscious to be able to do what I need to do, which is really get at the heart of meaning. And I think the last video the last series really got to the heart of it, because what I was able to do is to show you the fully realized complication to the initial problem that I posed, right? Which is in asking about the semiological status of the signal inconceivable, you see that there's a collapse of a primary source of meaning, because there isn't a there by definition cannot be a corresponding signification unless it's some sort of abstracted mathematical conception, which I don't think answers it. Also, we saw that there was a collapse of the primary source of meaning in the signification ineffable, because by definition there can't be a trigger, there can't be a signifier, right, for that. However, there is a relationship, there is a value, there is a secondary source of meaning between these sort of incomplete signs, right? Also, we recognize that an empty sign, a sign without a signal and a signification, is not a sign. There is no sign, there's no like empty set sign, it doesn't exist. So, by definition, the starting point then, and this is at least sort of me sort of conceptualizing, and I could be wrong, but the starting point for all of semiology rests, you know, it's a bit of an audacious claim, may rest in a recognition that you can have an incomplete sign. The problem being is that since we lose the primary source of meaning, the only way to begin the discourse with respect to that initial question that I posed is at a secondary source level, at a relational level, which means that according to Saussure, Saussure says that the sound pattern, the signifier, cannot be understood in terms of its physiological nature. It's not tree as said as tree, it's like, because I can think quietly to myself, so it has to be psychological. Therefore, any response to my initial question has to be in a Saussurean sense, articulated by the psychoanalyst or the psychologist, and I'm going to try and see if I can find it in Lacan. I wasn't able to find it in Lacan, but if you know of a place in Lacan or some other theorist, Zizek might have something to say to this specifically. I don't know if he's addressed the question that I posed specifically before, but I would imagine Zizek, Lacan, Freudian type stuff, there's something there. So enough of that. So the structure of the letter in the unconscious. All right. The first thing is to recognize that for Lacan via Freud, everything in Lacan is via Freud, right? So I would say that I'm a Zizek groupie, and Zizek might say that he's a Lacanian groupie, and Lacan would say that he's a Freudian groupie. So through hypothetical syllogism, I'm sort of a Freudian groupie, which I have a problem with that a bit, but you see how this goes. And I'm sort of making light of the situation, but basically everything in this text from Lacan is understood in Freud. So much so that there's a part of the text, I don't remember where he's like, I apologize if it seems that all I'm doing is sort of summarizing Freud, right? And I don't really know Freud that well at all, right? Graduate students have a better understanding of Freud than I have, because I haven't really analyzed Freud. I do understand semiotics, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to specifically address the points in the text that pertain to semiotics. All that other Freudian stuff, I'm not going to address, or I'm going to address through the conception of semiotics. So the first point then is that for Lacan via Freud, the structure of language, right? The structure of language is to be discovered within the unconscious, right? That's important. So for Lacan, language is discovered, and I think that's a great word, within the unconscious, right? It's discovered within the unconscious, right? And that's 495 in the original pagination.